Hey, third graders, we're going to work some more today on horizontal bar graphs and vertical bar graphs, but we're going to talk about multi-digit numbers. So you'll notice at the top of page 287, it's 287, the title has the word multi-digit, and I underlined that multi part because that means more than one or many. So these numbers have more than one digit or they have many digits. And you're going to notice how these are different from the ones we did yesterday. So we've got this horizontal bar graph right here that talks about spring trip. Okay, and then on the left side, the label is driver. And you're going to see some names here of people who are driving. And then at the bottom, the label is miles driven. So how far are they driving? And I want you to look here at the numbers that we're using. Right? Yesterday, we were hopping by twos or fours. Today, every hop is 50 miles. So we've got 50. Okay, 50 more would be 100, 150, all the way up to 400 on our graph. Okay, so we're going to look at these four people and we're going to figure out how many miles they've driven on their spring trip. So we're going to look at that first before we go ahead and answer any questions. So let's look at Aaron. Okay, if I see Aaron's bar ends here and I follow that straight down, he drove 300 miles. So I'm going to put that at the end of his bar. Okay, Jing looks like went 350, so even further. Okay, here we have Shahid. That red bar, when I follow it down, is 250. And then Barbara, she drove 200 miles. Okay, so now we've interpreted what the information is on the graph. We've looked at all the different labels. Now we can start to answer some questions. And remember, this is the same type of information that we've been looking at. It's just that it's multi-digit numbers, so really big numbers. Okay? And we've already done addition and subtraction with that, so we should be able to do the same thing with these graphs. Okay? Let's look and see how many miles did Shahid drive. Well, we already figured that out. So if I look back at the graph, he drove 250 miles. Okay, and remember our label here, how many what? How many miles? So we want to include that label with our answer. Okay, now it says, who drove 100 more miles than Barbara? So who, it's going to be a person, right? Who drove 100 more miles than Barbara? So let's see, Barbara drove 200 miles. What would be 100 more than that? Right? We're going to have to figure that out. 200 plus 100, right? If you can do that mental math, you might already know the answer. If you need to stack your multi-digit numbers and add them together, you're going to find, right, that it's 300 miles. So who drove 300 miles? If we look back at our graph, we can see that Aaron drove 300 miles. So Aaron is the answer. This is the solution. This is how we figured out who drove, right, 300 miles. Okay, but this is not our answer. The name, Aaron, tells us who. Okay. Now, let's look here because remember we talked the other day that sometimes how they ask us or what they're asking us for is a little confusing, and we have to really stop and think, okay, what specifically do I need to do to solve this problem? So for number 3, it says, how many more miles did Aaron and Barbara combined drive than Jing? So there's that word than. That tells me we're going to compare some things, right? And we're looking at how many more miles, right? That's going to be our label. Did Aaron and Barbara combined? So we're taking Aaron's miles and Barbara's miles and we're putting them together. We're combining them. Okay, and then we're going to compare that number. to how many Jing drove. Right? So let me pull that chart back down. You've got it right in front of you. Okay, Aaron and Barbara combined, right? This is like a two-step word problem. So let's put our first step here. We have to figure out how many miles Aaron and Barbara drove. Aaron is 300, Barbara is 200. So we need to combine those or add them together. They drove 500 miles together, right, combined. But Jing drove 350. So we're comparing 500 and 350, okay? And we want to find the difference between them. So we have to then, remember, use our first answer in our second step. So 500 and 350. Okay, we're going to find the difference. So that means we're going to subtract. We need to have the large number on top. So 500 miles, and we're going to take away the 350 miles to see how many more miles these two people drove compared to Jing. Okay, so I can subtract. My number's the same, right? 0 minus 5. I can't do that. I have to ungroup. 10 minus 5, that I can do. And 4 minus 3. So the difference is 150. So our answer is 150 more miles, because that's what they asked us. How many more miles did these people drive than Jing? Okay. So the same. Here's another one that's combined. Right? Here is one for number 5 that talks about fewer miles. Right? How many fewer miles did Barbara drive than Jing? So comparing those two people. And then they're asking, hey, can you come up with another question we could answer by looking at that graph? Okay, so if you look at that graph, what could you ask? You could be very specific about all these different people. I always think it's interesting to find out, right, how many miles did everyone drive all together, right, on their spring trip. So you can think about, I would add all these numbers together to solve that one. Okay, we're going to flip the page and we're going to move from a horizontal multi-digit bar graph on the back to a vertical multi-digit bar graph. Okay, so you can see again the numbers are quite large. This is all about canned goods at Turner's Market. So things you can buy in a can at the grocery store. Okay, talks about number of cans on this side. It starts at 0, goes all the way up to 700, and then the type of canned goods at the bottom. We've got peaches and beans and peas. Okay, so just talking about 3 types of canned goods. So when we look at that, we want to first figure out our totals for each. Okay, I think that's always a good place to start. That way you've already done some of the work. So if we look at peaches and we go up to the vertical bar there, we can tell that there were 300 cans of peaches at the market. How many cans of beans? Ooh, now this one is right in between, right? It's right halfway in between. So what is, these are hops of 100. What's halfway in between of 100? Think about that. Yeah, it's the 50 mark, right? So this is going to be 550 cans of beans. And then for peas, go ahead and write that number on the top as well. It's going to be 400. Okay, so we've done part of the work. Now we can answer some questions. Okay, let's look at number 7. It says, how many cans of peas are at Turner's Market? Well, we just figured that out. We can write 400 cans, right? Because they're asking us how many cans. So make sure you put your label on there and don't forget to add that. Look at this next one. We haven't seen one like this. It says, are there more cans of beans or of peas and peaches combined? Okay, so we've got beans or peas and peaches combined. They go together, right? We're comparing one to a group. Okay, so how many beans are there? Ooh, 550. How many peas and peaches combined? You have to look and see. Well, here's peaches. That's 300. And the peas are 400. So if we add those together, we're going to get 700. That's combined. So are there more cans of beans or more cans of peas and peaches combined together? Well, we know 700 is more than 550, right? So our answer would be peas and peaches combined. And combined is a good word, just means together, right? Grouping things together. Okay. How many cans of beans and peaches are there together? So we would add the beans and the peaches, right? How many more cans of beans are there than peas? So we're kind of comparing. If we're looking for how many more, right, we want to know the difference between them. So we're going to subtract. Whenever we're trying to find the difference, we want to subtract. Let's try that one. Beans and peas. 550 beans, 400 peas. We know that the large number goes on top. Ooh, 150 more cans, right, of beans than there are of peas. Okay, so some of these questions are similar, but they're just talking about different canned goods, or maybe on a different chart, they're talking about different flowers or different types of vehicles, right? We've done all of that. So you just want to be paying particular attention to what are they asking me. These are pretty easy to read, right? But then you have to take that information and you have to apply it. You have to be able to use it and understand it in a way that's going to make sense, right? So same type of graph, except today we just happen to have multi-digit numbers, so larger numbers.